Living time. Modern science tells us that time is circular and composed of events. However, this was said in antiquity too, not merely by poets and philosophers, but by esoteric teachers. What is your day composed of? Events. Some, in fact most of them on a very small scale, such as the event of losing your keys, or the event of the cell phone charger fusing, the event of your receiving a letter or a postcard, guaranteeing good prices on property you've offered for sale. My log fire would not light. This is an event and a common one at that. Sometimes events are rather similar, and so we call this coincidence. However, I can see no connection yet between selling my house and the fire not lighting. What events are we going to ignore, and what are we going to identify with? This is what is important, once we can see that life is simply a series of events. Events clustered around the line of the day, the line of extension in time that we call our day. What are we going to pay attention to, and what are we going to separate from with regard to this cluster of events? Shall I be negative all day because my fire would not light? We misplace our cell phone, we then going to make this event stretch out over the whole of our day, with all of its quarrels, repercussions and suspicions, such as, who has taken it? One single unpleasing event can easily be expanded into an entire day. This is what people like to do who select negative things. They sometimes expand an unpleasant event, even across their entire lives, till it becomes their narrative, the story, and it defines them. This means that with time, being a series of events, it is possible to make one of those events take up all of our time. Obsess and brood over it, hatch tea into some twisted thing. Our life is our time. It is not other people's in the same way. We may share some things, but we are all in our own time. Time is a series of events, and we each have our own events, then share some with others. The three higher dimensions form time, recurrence, and eternity. Taking only the fourth dimension as a line called time, going in a direction at right angles or perpendicular to all the three dimensions of space, it passes through each person as a series of events. We lose our cell phone, which is personal, or we pass into the path of a hurricane, which is a shared event. Understand that it is not the clock, but events that we are traveling through. We all say, taking time as the artificial clock, that it is 10:30, or it is 2025. That is, however, not time. What events are we identified with at this point in time, called artificially 10:30, or 2025? Do you imagine that to the ancient Greeks there was anything called 10:30 or 100 BC? Time is not dates in clock time, but events. All the time we are in some event. We are perhaps negative, owing to some event, because we are in that state and caught up in that event. The event, coming along, seeks what it can take out of us, so it entangles us. We obsess and say, this situation is intolerable. The event has snagged us and we are incapable either of observing ourselves with regard to that particular event, or of remembering ourselves in its presence, in other words not identifying with it. Time understood psychologically is a pattern of events, a checkerboard of black and white. So it is necessary to learn to expand the better, and to contract the worst events. We can see that time is elastic and not clock time as we imagine it. Recall years ago that a scientist compared time with a mollusk. This is where P.D. Ouspensky agreed with Professor Einstein. A mollusk is a soft-bodied animal having no internal skeleton, and so a creature that can contract or expand different portions of its body at will. A vertebrate cannot do this, because it has a framework of bones. Therefore we have to become like mollusks in our relation to the day and to its events. The idea that we can dwell on things too much is of course familiar. We can become mired in some event that happened a long time ago. However, it is not sufficiently understood or realized that we possess the power of contracting or even expanding the series of events that make up our day. We can expand ourselves into an event or contract ourselves out of it. We have all observed snails, then noticed how their horns sense a thing and either expand or contract. It is something like that. Everything physical, everything seeable or visible is a pattern of something psychological in us. We only to go to the zoo to realize this. Every animal, every created form of hatred and defense is represented psychologically in us. People in fact can be far more cruel and vindictive than any animal representation, because the outer world lies within us. The cosmos is in us, and at the same time we are a microcosm. All that we see outwardly lies in some way within us, be it a wasp, a rat, snake, fly, piglet, fox, tiger, chameleon, grasshopper, mole, bird, beetle, fish, stork, and so on. Have you ever noticed the waspish eyes in you, or the foxy eyes? Have you noticed the chameleon eyes that change color according to the situation, and like politicians blow hot or cold according to the circumstances? Do you know the snake, or particularly the fish in you? What lies in your ocean, beyond your present shores? They are all in there. The laborious and blind mole, the nervous, superficial bird, the unpleasant-smelling and hard-shelled beetle, the everlastingly reiterating grasshopper, the buzzing, brainless fly, dashing into everything haphazardly, the savage, mindless tiger, the secret rat, the upright, solemn imbecile stork. All of these are in us, as well as in the good, irrational animals. Which will you connect yourself with in regard to some particular event? When you begin to see that there is, psychologically speaking, no clock time and indeed no time at all, even according to the big clock due to the rotation of the earth that gives night and day. Or the bigger clock due to the revolution of the rotating earth in its orbit around the sun, which makes up seasons, making the earth green and then brown and then white and then green again. When you begin to understand that time is events and your attitude to them, hence finally your inner states, then you begin to be able to think about recurrence. You begin to reflect that your past in fact, lies right in front of you. Have you ever reflected upon what states you have chiefly lived in? In the states belonging to a mole, to a bird, or what? Examine the totem pole, then reflect upon how you have taken the events that you have passed through. According to how you take an event, so is your state. You can contract an event or expand it, according to how you want to take it. Can you separate from yourself, from an event? A person can become stalled in some event from long ago, and as it were, go into mourning, then walk about like some dark, dead creature, no doubt thinking it meritorious to do so. Since time is expandable or contractible with regard to our taking of events, we can obviously select one event today, and then expand it. Notice that the general tendency is to expand an unpleasant event, an event displeasing to us, and then to contract everything else. We cannot forget, can we, how somebody treated us in a cavalier fashion, just as if we were of no consequence. This is an event. It is an event that can happen to everyone, and a definite event called no one treats me rightly. When humanity was created finally, after so much experimentation, all possible events that could happen to us were also created. It would be useless to create a living thing without the necessary event so that it can have a life of experience. If time were not the contractible and expandable mollusk, a soft-bodied, muscular thing, then everything would be rigid, like a foot rule. However, time, in other words events, are not of this kind. They can and should be accompanied by a method of selection, of choosing and discarding, of giving attention to and withdrawing attention from a particular incident, an event, or some situation that inevitably attends to its apparent passage through our limited consciousness. Time is all there, just like the countryside, however we come upon it bit by bit, as in a railway carriage, watching the landscape unfold before us out of the window, then pass through it according to our state. If we add conscious state to mechanical state, or blind reaction to certain events, then we are at a higher level of being. We can begin to realize that some events should be contracted, even squeezed up and discarded, while some should be left just as they are. Others again, should be expanded, with all of our power of inner work and self-remembering, because they greatly enrich our lives.